Welcome to the B&C Podcast, the number one dating and men's self-help improvement podcast in Africa. So, a little while back, I shared with you guys uh, Arthur Schopenhauer's tips to win arguments. So, like I told you before, Arthur Schopenhauer was a German philosopher, and he offered some strategies you can deploy when you want to ace an argument. So, I listed 15 some time ago, I think like 2 weeks ago. So this time I'm also going to offer another 15. Then they are in total 38. So I'm going to give 15. Then after this round, I'm going to give the other 8, and then to be a wrap up. So I'm going to read them out. Last time I stopped on number 15, so today I'm going to start on 16. And here he says, when your opponent puts forth a proposition, find it consistent with his or her other statements, beliefs, or when your opponent puts forth a proposition, find it consistent with his or her statements. Oh God, why am I making these mistakes? When your opponent puts forth a proposition, find it inconsistent with his or her other statements, beliefs, actions, or lack of action. Then number 17, if your opponent presses you with a counter proof, you will often be able to save yourself by advancing some subtle distinction to try to find a second meaning or an ambiguous sense for your opponent's idea. Let me read it again. If your opponent presses you with a counter proof, you often be able to save yourself by advancing some subtle distinction, trying to find a second meaning or an ambiguous sense for your opponent's idea. Then number 18, if your opponent has taken up a line of argument that will end in your defeat, you must not allow him or her to carry it to its conclusion. Interrupt the dispute, break it off altogether, or lead the opponent to a different subject. Number 19, should your opponent expressly challenge you to produce an objection to some definite point in his or her argument, and you have nothing much to say, try to make the argument less specific. If your opponent has admitted all or most of your premises, do not ask him or her directly to accept your conclusion. Rather, draw the conclusion yourself, as if it too had been admitted. Then 21, when your opponent uses an argument that is superficial, refute it by setting forth its superficial character. But it is better to meet the opponent with a counter argument that is just as superficial, and so dispose of him or her. For it is with victory that you are concerned, not with truth. In other words, it's just about winning. Who cares about the truth? Though here we stand for objective truth. We think objective truth should always be fought for. But according to Arthur Schopenhauer, sometimes the truth don't matter. You just want to win. So maybe a politician. Who cares? You just want to win. So then, if your opponent asks you to admit something from which the point in dispute would immediately follow, you must refuse to do so, declaring that it begs the question. If your opponent asks you to admit something from which the point in dispute will immediately follow, you must refuse to do so, declaring that it begs the question. Contradiction and contention irritate a person into exaggerating his or her statements. By contradicting your opponent, you may drive him or her into extending the statement beyond its natural limits. When you then contradict the exaggerated form of it, you look as though you had refuted the original statement. Your opponent tries to extend your own statement further than you intended, define your statement's limits. This trick consists of a false syllogism. Your opponent makes a proposition, and by false inference and distortion of his or her ideas, you force them from the proposition other propositions that are not intended, and that appear absurd. If it then appears the opponent's proposition gave rise to the inconsistencies, and so appears to be indirectly refuted. If your opponent is making a that is number 25. If your opponent is making a generalization, find a stance to the contrary. One only valid contradiction is needed to overthrow the opponent's proposition. Yeah, so if you see your opponent making some contradictions, find a way to nail them. They say this, and then the next statement that they say a bit contradicts what they had originally said, nail their ass so that they have no talking points anymore. Yeah, so always look out for contradictions when arguing with people. A brilliant move is to turn the tables and use your opponent's arguments against him or herself. Very smart move. Sometimes you can be having a discussion with someone, yeah, really taking you, and then at some point they say something that contradicts with what they had originally said, or something that is against what they usually stand for. So you now use that to nail them. Should your opponent surprise you by becoming particularly angry at an argument, you must urge it with all the more zeal. Not only will this make the opponent angry, it may be presumed that you put your finger on the weak side of his or her case, and that the opponent is more open to attack on this point than you expected. The trick is chiefly practical in a dispute if there is an audience who is not an expert on the subject. You make an invalid objection to your opponent who seems to be defeated in the eyes of the audience. This strategy is particularly effective if your objection makes the opponent look ridiculous, or if the audience laughs. The opponent must make a good, complicated explanation to correct you. The audience will not be disposed to listen. Yeah, sometimes, like we said before, the truth don't matter. Just find a way of, maybe you're arguing in a public debate, like how politicians do, maybe it's something that could easily appeal to people's sentiments or values and not necessarily the truth. You can finding a way of nailing your opponent through that and make people laugh or make people resonate with what you said. Your opponent is flawed. So yeah. 29. If you find that you're being beaten, you can create a diversion that is you can suddenly begin to talk of something else, although it had bearing on the matter in dispose. This may be done without presumption if the diversion has some general bearing on the matter. Yeah. Sometimes you can be in an argument and you feel like a little bit of distraction can help you put your opponent out of balance. You bring something that is a bit abstract to, try to divert the conversation a little bit so that you move your opponent or move them off balance, and maybe they could forget their talking points, so they start becoming confused. So that can help you. Then number 30, make an appeal to authority than reason. If your opponent respects an authority or an expert, quote that authority to further your case. If needed, quote what the authority said in some other sense or circumstance. Authorities that your opponent fails to understand are those which he or she generally admires the most. You may also, should it be necessary, not only trace your authorities, but actually falsify them or quote something that you have invented entirely yourself. Yeah, people respect science, people respect professors, people respect big figures or myths. You can quote the Bible, you can quote a very popular scientist, you can quote moral authorities, anything that you think can help plug your weaknesses in that argument and get the arguments to your side will help according to Arthur Schopenhauer. So those are the 15 points for this segment. I'm going to record another segment in a few seconds. So thanks for watching the B&C podcast. Remember, our focus is on health, money, and relationships, which is in brackets dating. So thanks for watching this. Bye.